All right. Welcome to the Recovery Bros podcast with your co hosts, Adam Sudd and Doug Bopes. We are two guys in recovery, and we are talking all things mental health, addiction science, conversations, strategies, tools that you can use in your real life. Doug, what's up, bro?
What's up, man? How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to talk about how to reframe your past for growth because I think a lot of people, when they get into recovery, this haunts them potentially for the rest of their lives.
Yeah. Well, the thing about people in recovery is that we don't get to that point where we want to check in for treatment because we did well.
Yeah.
It's like we've usually burned more bridges than we've built, either personally, professionally, socially, financially, right? We've done some damage to our lives and we've gotten to a point it's like, well, we are out of bridges here. And so that's a tough thing to come to terms with is, how do I not just live in constant shame of that person? And then was there anything I should even consider valuable that I could take with me?
Well, yeah, and I think especially when you have beaten yourself up for like 15 to 20 years and your default or habit is to just beat yourself up, then even when you get into recovery and you're doing something good for yourself, it's going to be hard for you to not do that, even though you're like moving towards righting those wrongs and like becoming a better version of yourself.
Yeah. I think one of the strategies that I think is really valuable is radical acceptance. Like, I know it's like a freaking like woo-woo term, right? Like, oh, radical acceptance. Like, just practice radical acceptance. But like radical acceptance is coming to the reality that like, shit, man, if you could have done better in those moments, like if you really possessed the capacity to have done better in those moments, you would have, right? Like, honestly, right? Like if you were not as strung out, if you were not having a withdrawal or whatever, or if life was slightly less, painful at every single step of the day, and there was a sense that tomorrow could be better, you might have taken other steps and you didn't, right? Like you survived points of your life that felt unsurvivable, right? So there's a part of you that should at least applaud those efforts, even if the majority of what you did didn't lead you in a direction you wish you would have gone, right? Like there was a part of you that was seeking to survive a life it didn't want to be a part of. Like, so I think that's a place to start.
Well, and I think the problem is people, and we talked about this in the last episode, they talk about like the sunken cost fallacy, right?
Yeah.
Losing time. And there's no other way to look at it. And people might say it sound trite to like say, well, look at how things happen for you and not to you, or to say, well, it just happened and it's time to move on. But the reality is, like, there's no other like logical way to move forward in that situation, because if you do the thing that a lot of people do and just harp on the past and say, oh my God, I wasted 10 years of my life, 15 years of my life, 30 years of my life, like, you're going to be a miserable person, and there's nothing you can possibly do to change that. So the only thing to do is to just move forward and just accept that you're not that person anymore.
I think that's actually really a great perspective, and one of the perspectives that I really appreciate actually comes from the way that Jordan Peterson actually talks about grief. He says that there's a moral responsibility to grief that we need to take on, that we need to undertake, which is to not let it turn us into someone that would spread suffering, right? So we have a moral responsibility. A part of you checked into treatment because there's something about yourself and your life that you believe is meaningful enough that you are interested to stay in it being life. You are interested to staying in it. Okay, so then the past has happened. What are you have two choices. You can either let it be what it is, be as an example of what you won't tolerate for yourself anymore, create a real clear identity of who you want to be moving forward. None of those things are for you anymore. And you now know that and you know what it looks like. And so you can either pursue a life that looks more like what you would want for yourself, or you can make it turn yourself into this cruel, bitter, angry person, which will make everything worse. So, like, which direction do you want to go?
There really is no other choice. There's just the right choice in that moment. And I think that it's hard too, because I think especially like, I'm sure there's people that are going to be watching this that maybe have had some time under their belt, but early on when your like win-loss record, there's a lot of L's.
Yeah,
You know, it's
great
hard to like
analogy.
it's hard to look at the W's. You're like, "Oh god, like I have just messed my life up so much." Like, this all sounds well and good, but for where I'm at right now, my mind hasn't even come to terms with the fact that I'm this new person. And I think in order to get to that place, what you must do is you have to be able to kind of be in that present moment, which I know we've talked about before, and just compound those days. Because if you can compound those days and you're like, okay, today I'm going to focus on this person I want to become. I want to focus on, changing my character, changing my identity, whatever you want to call it. Then you figure out what are those things you need to do on a daily basis. And then those things will compound. Then over time, because your habits are changing, because your life is changing on a daily basis, that's going to lead to long-term success. In the weight loss world, which I know we both have a lot of experience in, it's like you don't just lose 50 pounds. You lose 50 pounds by identifying how many pounds you need to lose per week that's reasonable and healthy. Then you identify the things you need to do on a daily basis to get there. And then over time, you lose a couple pounds in a week. Then it's like 4 pounds in 2 weeks. And in a month, maybe you lose 8 to 10 pounds if you're lucky. Then that compounds. And now you've lost 50 pounds in 5, 6 months. And now you're a completely different person. You become almost unrecognizable at that point because you started on day one.
Yeah. I think the other problem might be that number one, you're absolutely right, which is what is the appropriate, competent agency that could move you forward realistically and successfully? Which is like, I want to lose 50 pounds. Well, you're not going to do that in a week. So don't expect it. Right. That's unreasonable. Right. So what is something that you could predict would happen in a week if you were to organize your life appropriately so that what you expected and what you experience are the same thing and you can feel good about yourself, right? I think the other thing is, do you forget the past or do you just move on? Uh, I think it's good to not live in the past, but we shouldn't leave it unexamined, right? Right. It's you want to. I think Jordan Peterson said that the past has to be articulated, understood, metabolized, and then subordinated to be a better future. Meaning, right, like it's if you were to use it as a toolkit to better understand who you want to be moving forward, that's great. But don't use it as the self-punishment resentment identity, which is I ruined everything. I am this way because of what happened. Other people did this to me, and so I'm justified in staying the way I am. Look at how bad my life was in the past. I this is there this all makes sense, right? I would say that to am I living slightly more honestly than yesterday? Okay. Am I taking slightly more responsibility than I would have been doing, before I checked into treatment? Am I making my environment slightly less chaotic than I used to in the past? And you can use your past as reference points for that. So that's valuable, right? You have this history to use as a reference point to building a person that's more of the person you want to be. Am I becoming someone I could respect more than I used to be, right? So I think in that way, having the past be something that you use to craft your future is valuable.
You have to be able to like use your past as a teacher or as an asset because the past, like while we're talking about not living in the past, as a topic of conversation, I mean, obviously the past is why you're here. Like because you've done certain things, because you've acted a certain way is why you're in this position in the first place. But, I kind of like to use the analogy of like your past being like a rear view mirror, right? And, if you don't have your eyes like on the road, like when you're driving, right, with what's in front of you, like, and you just stare in your rearview mirror, like there's a good chance you're gonna get into a car accident. But sometimes you want to check and see what's behind you, see if you can take a different way, see if you can go this way, and then eventually you like weave around and you get to your destination. I think that's a great like metaphor for life because like your past definitely taught you something. Probably taught you some things you don't want to do. Probably taught you some things that you should be doing. Probably taught you who you should spend time with, who you shouldn't spend time with. And it also taught you, you know, some other lessons about yourself, like how strong you were to survive something like addiction. And I think you use that as leverage to build more momentum as you're like going forward in life. I think where the past gets caught up is like we've talked about, like where you just harp on it and that becomes your identity and you live in it. But when you look at it and you're like, okay, this is what it taught me. These are the lessons I learned. Here's what I'm going to do with it moving forward. You start to transcend things and things start to mean differently to you than they were. Your past is no longer something that is rotten and that brings you down. Now you see it as this gift. I'll give you a perfect example before I punt it back to you. When I was a kid, I wasn't confident. I was quiet. I wasn't a good speaker. I wasn't athletic. But going through addiction, I got into shape, which helps with my self-confidence. And it helps me be more confident in who I was because I had to own the person I was. And I also built confidence by overcoming those hard things. And it made me feel strong and resilient and have character. And then as a result of that, I started to share my story, which got me good at speaking and relationship building and that sort of thing. But all those skills that I have now would have never happened had I have not gone through what I went through.
I, and I can say from example, knowing you, Doug, I can't imagine a version of you that isn't a good speaker. It's wild to
Yeah,
think you weren't one, right? Because you're so you're so very much a confident speaker nowadays, and so it really does speak to the profound transformation that you must have experienced. But and so what I want to add to that is we can't allow shame to drive our recovery. Here's what I mean by that. Um, it's not sufficient as a recovery strategy. You can't get sober because you're ashamed of what you did. That's not going to work long term. What matters is that shame tells you that something has gone wrong. That's good. You now know that there are standards that you're going to hold yourself to moving forward. It's truthful admission, responsibility, repair, and a future aim that's strong enough to organize your behavior. So I'd say like this: we should actually tell the truth about our past. If you're early in recovery, this is one of the steps, honestly, is, you go back and you do moral inventory, right? Which is tell the truth about who you were, write it down, face what happened and who you were, take responsibility for what is yours. Stop carrying what's not yours anymore, right? Make amends where it's necessary in order for you to not carry it anymore if it's not yours. Then aim at something that's difficult, meaningful, and redemptive enough that your future becomes more compelling than your addiction, right? So it's like everyone who's in recovery has something that they're ashamed of. Okay, great, good. That tells you about who you want to be. Time to tell the truth about it. Write it down. Let it be a compass. Let it be a guide for how you're going to be moving forward. Take responsibility for it and then let it go, man. Like seriously, like the thing is that you can't undo what's been done. And if it's something you're ashamed of, then let it be a guide that tell you where your moral compass points from now on. That's fantastic. You can use that as something that creates active participation in a life that you would have pride in, that you would be proud of moving forward.
absolutely. And I think this all kind of goes back to who do you want to become?
Yeah.
Do you want to be the person who's like at that campfire and you're around the campfire with, your family or whatever, and your kids are like asking you or your friends or whoever is like asking you about your life. And you're like, man, like I wish I would have taken more chances. I wish I would have stopped, holding on to resentments or all the past mistakes I made. I wish I would have not let my mistakes haunt me? Or do you want to be the person that's like, I'm really proud of myself because, I lived a very horrible life for a period of time and I turned things around. And I didn't just turn things around, I changed who I was and I worked on myself and I used my past as a catalyst for transformation and the type of person I wanted to become. Was it easy? No. Was it difficult? Yes. Um, did things come naturally to me? No. But over time, I didn't give up on myself. And it's like, I think perspective like that is everything. And kind of, they say like one of the ways to really change your behavior is to download an app, and it's to make yourself older. And it's like you look at yourself like, whoa, you look at yourself like 30 years from now, and it
Yeah.
really can change your perspective.
I didn't even think about that. I remember when those AI filter things first came out and you could, like, see yourself at 80, and, like, to see yourself as someone who's lost so much of the things that make you who you are today, it, like, puts it into such perspective, right? That, like, you know, the biggest mistake most people believe is to think that they've got time, that they've got the time to wait another day and decide on it. It's like, I heard Goggins talking. He goes, you know, is January 1 going to come around? Are you going to have spent another year sitting in the same place you were a year ago? Like, because the biggest mistake is that everyone thinks they've got time. You think time cares that it's your birthday? You think time cares that it's a holiday? You think time cares that, you're on vacation? No, you don't have time. Get to work. Do the things. It's what you said. Uh, they ask people on their deathbed, you know, what is it the things that they regret the most? And turns out that the things that people did aren't the things that they regret the most. It's the things they didn't do. It's the action they didn't take. Right? It isn't the things that they were ashamed of, 20 years ago. That's not the things they regret. It's the fact that they didn't take action to become the thing they could have been if they had.
Yeah, and I think you don't want to be in that place because that place is it's a dark place. And I think, I've said this before, and I think it's relevant to what we're talking about. Like, I think it's better to feel like an idiot now than to look like an idiot, or it's better to look like an idiot now than to feel like an idiot long term.
Mm. Oh, that's a good one, bro.
Because I think now it's if you do things now and you try to make a change, you're gonna look kind of dumb at first, and it's gonna be kind of tough, and it's gonna not be so easy, and maybe you don't think have things figured out. But if you don't take that chance on yourself and you don't change, sure enough, you're gonna feel terrible about yourself long term.
I heard a quote that said, "Be brave enough to look like the fool everyone wished they had the courage to look like once." Because you do that once and then you learn and you're never that fool again, right? And everyone else now will never have become the person that and learn the things you learned by asking the stupid question or looking like the untrained fool learning something for the first time. It's like, be the bravest person in the room to ask the dumb question everyone's too cowardly to ask, right? Be the person who's willing to look like a fool and learn the thing because they don't care how they look today because in 10 years they're going to be the person they've always wanted to be. It's like, that's fantastic.
Yeah, you have to make that decision. You know what I mean? Like, you have to get to that place where you are just confident with that, just confident with those things that you have to get to a place where you're so confident with yourself that the mistakes that you made just feel like a different version of you so that you can have acceptance around that.
Yeah, that's such a good point because I know this to be true for me, and I know it's very likely true for you, is that when you talk about your addiction story, it doesn't feel like you're talking about you anymore. It feels like you're talking about, Doug 1.0, right? Who had a lot of bugs to fix, right? you know? And then, you are Doug 2.0, right? The one who went through all the patches and all the firmware updates. And it's like, oh, it's a very different version of you. I'm not the same software anymore. I'm literally different. But I would say there's a quote in Stoicism about the two biggest traps is caring what they think and thinking that they care. It's like at the end of the day, man, who cares? You did something shameful. Welcome to human race, right? You did something you're ashamed of, you're embarrassed about. Well, welcome to being a human being, man. Like, okay, I'm sure it's not fun to have to take amends for those things. And at the end of the day, this is your life. And if you want it to be better, if you want to move forward, that and I'm not saying this is easy because trust me, I know exceedingly how difficult this is. But at a certain point, you have to stop caring whether anyone holds that against you or not, because you're never going to know who those people are. And if you're waiting for the forgiveness of the world for your past behaviors in order for you to move forward, you will not move forward.
It's a great way to close. I mean, this is a powerful episode that I think people need to hear, and really understand like immediately if they're in recovery.
Yeah. I think the thing about recovery, one of the biggest things is deciding who you want to be independent of anyone else, right? Who do you want to be and why do you want to be that person? And then don't care what anyone else thinks about that, right? Go be the version of you that you want to be in the world, that could be valuable, that could be, responsible, that could be honest. And if the past you is a problem for other people, it's a problem for them.
True. Well, Adam, this has been awesome.
Yeah,
Um,
man.
Great episode. If people, I would love to hear people's thoughts in the comments below, or let us know what topics you want to cover moving forward.
Yes.
Just really important, words of wisdom in today's video.
Yeah. Anything you guys want us to talk about, we're here for you. The show is for you. We're here to discuss any topics. If there's guests that you're interested in having us bring on, we'd love to hear thoughts as well. We have some guests lined up, but we're always interested in hearing what you all would like to see.
Awesome. Well, thanks, bro, for this great conversation.
My pleasure.